I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And we took a slight bit of a break from Old's Oscar Countdown last week to do my award show, The Connors. So if you guys are curious about my favorite movies of the year, favorite performances, directors, I had my own sort of award show last week. But now that we're back with the nominations, the sort of structure of the show changes. No longer are we going to be doing sort of breaking down every category and guess what's going to get nominated. Now it's going to be a little bit more free form. I'm going to be doing a different sort of type of videos where it's all Oscar analysis all the way up until, of course, the Oscars, where I'll give my predictions as to what's going to win. But in this video, it's a special video dedicated to the closest races that I think aren't necessarily set in stone, that some people may already have sort of locked in. I'm going to be talking about maybe some bold predictions, some sort of biggest questions going into Oscar night, videos like that, and of course, PGA, DGA winners reactions, SAG winners reactions, things like that, just to keep you guys updated on the Oscar race. But in this video, I just wanted to break down 4 of the closest races. So races where some people may think it's a clear, oh, this movie's going to win, and I disagree, or it's very close. It could be either or, and sort of break down some of my thoughts on these races to help you understand these races better, and maybe have a sort of second guessing in terms of, oh, maybe I thought that this was a lock, but maybe it's actually not. So without further ado, let's jump into it. My first category that I want to talk about is, of course, Best Picture. Now, even though Power of the Dog had a sort of tremendous, I'd say, nominations performance, it overperformed in pretty much every category it needed to. And it seems like the momentum is swaying in that direction. I'd be hesitant to say that The Power of the Dog is for sure going to win Best Picture, just because Best Picture is one of the most unpredictable categories we have every year. I mean, there's seemingly sort of no internal logic based on industry precursors or whatnot to ultimately come up with a decision. We look at a movie like Nomadland last year. 1 PGA, 1 DGA, didn't even get nominated at SAG, and then 1 Best Picture. But then you look at the year before that, Parasite lost PGA, lost DGA, but won SAG, and then not won Best Picture. So you look at the 2 years and you go, okay, well, what's important? Is SAG important or is it not important? Really at the end of the day, what matters is momentum. It matters with buzz, and it matters in terms of what this sort of new academy, which has been adding thousands of members every year to it, thinks. And a movie like Drive My Car would never ever have gotten nominated 3 years ago even, and it got nominated this year. So the academy's always changing. The prior preference styles are always different, which is why it's so exciting. But what we do know is that the Best Picture category is hard to predict, because it is the only category that uses the preferential ballot. All the other categories, people vote on what's the best animated movie of the year, and they check Toy Story 4, or this year I think it's going to go to Encanto. But with Best Picture, you actually have to rank your choices. So you have to say Power of the Dog was my first favorite, Belfast was my second favorite, and so on and so forth. And that's why we actually get movies like, I'd say, Green Book or Spotlight is a classic example, I think, of it, where it's not necessarily the most beloved movie of the year, but it is sort of seen as the most likable, generally well appreciated. So it actually gets Love number 2 votes and Love number 3 votes. But a movie like Promising Young Woman will never win Best Picture, because sure, it gets Love number 1 votes, but a lot of people also dislike that movie. It's a controversial movie. So it gets a lot of number 9 votes. So this year it's going to be interesting to see, will that sort of go ahead. I think The Power of the Dog is a movie that, of course, like I said, performed very well at nomination stage, should win DGA for Jane Campion, but a bit slow, tense. It's not necessarily an easy crowd pleaser in the same way I think Belfast is, which I don't think Belfast is out of the race completely. It did miss out on Best Editing, which is very notable. That's a key category in terms of predicting Best Picture. However, it did get nominations in Best Original Song and in Best Sound. So I think both of those categories, it wasn't necessarily guaranteed to get those nominations. There were sort of surprises on Oscar night, particularly something like a sound. Even though I predicted it, it was sort of an overperform. So Belfast generally did, I think, overperform, even getting in for something like Kenneth Branagh for director. And oftentimes we see sort of a connect tie with like a screenplay and an actor and a picture win. And I think Belfast can be like a Spotlight kind of a route and win Best Screenplay and then win Best Picture. It does seem a little bit more traditionally Best Picture-y in the sense that it is populist, it is generally well liked and easygoing, but it also still feels feels very personal, so that's a real chance. I mean, I wouldn't even count out a movie like King Richard, which did get a Best Editing nomination, which is similarly a sort of well-liked, beloved, more traditional story. And we've seen Best Picture winners get a Best Acting sort of tie-in too. Just last year, Frances McDormand won for Best Actress, and then of course Nomadland won for Best Picture. So who knows if we see a Will Smith and then picture win? That's potential possibility too. Right now, ultimately, I do think it's probably between a Belfast and The Power of the Dog, but I do think because of this category, every year is so hard to predict. We can't necessarily say that The Power of the Dog will win because, frankly, we never know. Then the Best Actress category is another category that I think is really up in the air, that this is one of the closest races going into Oscar night, and will be going into Oscar night, because when we're looking at precursors, I think the Globes slightly matter. I think SAG, of course, matters the most, and I think BAFTA matters a lot. However, BAFTA, because of their recent jury system, have given us a lot of strange nominations. For example, Nicole Kidman, Olivia Colman, those are the main contenders. Kristen Stewart were not nominated at BAFTA. So it's hard. We won't get any indication from BAFTA. No one's going to win there and give a great speech and matter ultimately. But SAG will give us some indication. So I look at it the way I look at it right now, and I have Nicole Kidman in as my front runner. Not only is she playing a real life person, but she's playing a real life person who is an actress. So the actors, of course, love that. Being the Ricardos, while it didn't get in for Best Picture and Best Screenplay, disappointed me there, but it did get in for something like J.K. Simmons and Javier Bardem. So there's clear support from the actors there. So I think they're going to want to put their chips behind at least one of those performances. I think most likely Nicole Kidman. I look at her performance there and I go, well, playing a real life person. And as a matter of fact, if you go past, and I did in the past 10 years, out of the 4 acting categories, there was an average of 1.4 of the acting winners that won by playing a real life person. So if we look at this year and you go, okay, but Will Smith we think is going to win for playing Richard Williams. Okay, that's the 1. Well, 1.4, it's not an average of 1 out of 4. It's more than 1. So usually it's sort of in the split here, but usually there's multiple performances that win. Multiple acting performances that win for playing real life people. So it's not necessarily a stretch to say Nicole will win here. I also think that Nicole, won her first Oscar for The Hours, which was early in the 2000s, and now the sort of second career of Nicole, The Big Little Lies, The Undoing, The Lion, the sort of modern revamped Nicole Kidman, I think maybe is deserving of another award. She does see as sort of a little bit of a career comeback, in the same way you could say Renee Zellweger for Judy, although that was a different scenario. But I do think this is sort of a second half of her career phase, Nicole Kidman, so there may be some appreciation for that there. But that being said, this category is still up in the air because you have a movie like The Lost Daughter doing surprisingly well, getting in for screenplay, but also getting in for Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter. So Olivia Colman here could win. I know she won just 2 years ago for 2018's The Favorite. However, let's not forget that 2018, I guess it would be 3 years ago by the time she won come Oscar night. But let's not forget that she won and beat Glenn Close and surprised, and then she got nominated in 2020 for The Father, and then she gets nominated here. So there may just be a huge sort of Olivia Colman support in the same way there was support for Sally Field or Mahershala Ali, or Christoph Waltz. We've seen these sort of two-time winners back-to-back frequently, and Olivia Colman does seem like that type of actress. You could even see a Kristen Stewart for Spencer. We had her at the beginning because she checked so many of the boxes of being the ingenue, of being a critically acclaimed movie. Now, Spencer didn't resonate with the Academy, disappointing in not getting in for a costume design, which should have been a slam dunk of a nomination. So I'm not positive on Kristen Stewart, and Olivia Colman just won. So ultimately, I'm sort of backing, I think, Nicole Kidman here, but this Best Actress race is really still very much up in the air. Then in my next category that I think is a close race is the Best Original Screenplay category. That for some reason I think a lot of people have convinced themselves maybe prematurely that Paul Thomas Anderson will win here for Best Original Screenplay for Licorice Pizza. And I think there's a lot of signs pointing to that. On one hand, you look at it and go, okay, well, Paul Thomas Anderson has been nominated now maybe it's 10 times. It was 8 times before Licorice Pizza. He may have been a producer, so it's regardless, he got nominated at least 9 times with this screenplay. He's a well-liked member of the Academy. He's never won. It's kind of seemed like okay, we need to give him something. So original screenplay is not Best Picture, Best Director. It's an easy one to give. I think a lot of people see him as someone like a peer, like Quentin Tarantino, mostly a writer. So they're going to give him an easy win there for screenplay. Oftentimes when we're looking at the Best Picture nominees in recent years, they like to spread spread the wealth. So Arrival will get a sound editing win, and Hacksaw Ridge will get an editing win, and it will sort of spread the wealth where every Best Picture movie will get some sort of a win in one of the categories. Now, that's going to be harder this year when we're talking about 10 nominees. But if we're looking at Licorice Pizza, what are its chances? I mean, it's not going to be most likely picture or director, so Screenplay are its best chances of winning. So that makes sense in terms of the spread the wealth theory, in terms of the Paul Thomas Anderson's overdone theory. However, these kind of theories, these kind of narratives aren't necessarily always the ones that are true come Oscar night. I mean, we thought Chadwick Boseman was going to win for Best Actor because of, his recent death and the tragedy and the narrative of that. We thought Glenn Close would win for The Wife because she'd never won before. And what about the narrative? Or even last year, Diane Warren for Best Original Song. She's been nominated 13 times. Let's give her the win, and that never happened either. So sometimes the narratives are overblown, particularly when the Academy is becoming larger and personal opinion comes into it, and there's less sort of a hive mind kind of a approach to a win. So when I look at that and I go, well, what's the other contender? And I think Best Original Screenplay, there's a strong case for Belfast. This is a movie that could win Best Picture. And let's not forget, when there's been some screenplay upsets in recent history, those movies have gone on to win Best Picture. Let's not forget that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was the favorite to win Best Original Screenplay, and that movie lost out to a Best Picture winner in Parasite. And then the year before that, everyone thought The Favorite was going to win Best Original Screenplay, and that movie lost out to a Best Picture winner in Green Book. So if Belfast is going to win Best Picture, I think its screenplay win sort of earlier on in the night may be indicative of its chances of winning. And also, Belfast, if we think this is a movie that's a very well-liked, popular movie that, could potentially win Best Picture, well, wouldn't the thinking also be that it should win at least one award? Well, I think aside from Best Picture, its best chances are probably Best Screenplay. So I'm not 100% convinced that Paul Thomas Anderson, because of the narrative that he's never won before, will get a slam dunk win here for Licorice Pizza over a movie like Belfast, or even a movie like King Richard, which we know is a very well-liked movie. So I think this is a much closer race than some people think, and I challenge you to rethink your preconceptions that, oh, this is Paul Thomas Anderson, check and done, because Belfast, I still think it is a strong movie, and there still may be some spreading the wealth factor that Belfast, based on nominations, was a more well-liked movie than Licorice Pizza. Then Best Costume Design is the final category I wanted to talk about today, and I think is a really close race. And this is not a close race to a lot of people, but to me, I think it is a close race. A lot of people, heavy odds are in the Cruella to win factor. But there's certain instances where, and certain pieces of data which sort of counteract that. Now, on the one hand, Cruella, it's about costume designers in many ways. It has so many great costumes, there's great style, it got in for production design, so there's support for the movie technically and generally, so it makes sense. Yeah, Cruella, about costume designers, lots of costumes, check that box. However, I would challenge you to not count out a movie like Dune. If we're comparing a movie like Dune to other movies like Mad Max Fury Road or Black Panther that sort of sweep in these technical categories, well, both of those movies won for Best Costume Design. I remember Mad Max Fury Road won in costume design over Cinderella. And even if we look at Black Panther or Mad Max Fury Road or The Fantastic Beasts costume design win, I look at those movies and I go, well, those are sort of sci-fi fantasy kind of movies that Mad Max will beat out a sort of traditionally costume design winner like Cinderella, which has the big poofy gowns and whatnot. They'll actually beat out those movies. In 2016, we weren't sure if it may have gone to a movie like Jackie, which has more of the traditional period dresses and whatnot. And it went to Fantastic Beasts, a sci-fi fantasy movie. So I think there is a strong contingent and appreciation within the Guild and within this branch of the Academy of the sort of sci-fi fantasy costumes. That it's not the sort of traditional. I think a lot of people have this thinking, oh, big ballroom gowns. As a matter of fact, in the past few years, it has not been that. So we have to be careful just to crown a big sort of gown dress focused movie like Cruella as the clear costume designer win, when a movie like Dune has a sort of more likely track record of the actual wins. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the past 7 winners of this Best Costume Design category, 6 of them were nominated for Best Picture, and the one that wasn't was Fantastic Beasts, which was a sci-fi fantasy kind of a movie. So if we're looking at Cruella wasn't nominated for Best Picture, Dune was. So oftentimes these movies that win in these categories are just well liked because they're one of the more popular movies of the year. So, Dune, I think, has a real chance there. And then also, if we think Dune, which is a heavy favorite right now to win in Best Production Design, there's a clear correlation many times. Best Production Design winner and Best Costume Design winners, oftentimes they're linked up. And if you look at Best Production Design, 7 out of the last 7 winners went to movies that were nominated for Best Picture. So you have Costume Design, 6 out of the last 7 winners went to Best Picture nominees. Same thing with Production Design, 7 out of the last 7. So there's a strong connection here between Costume Design and Production Design, and Costume Design winners and Best Picture nominees. So are we so convinced that Cruella is going to win? I'm not, just because there's a history here of this category going to sci-fi fantasy in recent years, which Dune fits that bill well, and it's also sort of fitting that category of a Best Picture nominee. We see this in Best Visual Effects often. We even see this in a category like Best Production Design or Best Editing. Movies that ultimately the winners are just movies that are well liked, Best Picture nominees. So let's not forget about that. And actually, as I'm recording this video, there is one category that I think is another kind of underrated one that I want to end off with. I know I said it was going to be Costume Design, but I think it's going to be this instead, and that's going to be Best Original Song. Despite a lot of people thinking this category will go to No Time to Die from the latest Bond movie, I don't think that's necessarily 100% guaranteed. I think right now my odds still are probably on No Time to Die, but it is definitely not a guarantee, because first of all, the Best Original Song category is hard to predict every year. Last year we saw the Judas and the Black Messiah song win, which was a surprise. We've seen surprises in the past with, as a matter of fact, 2015 Spectre, that Bond song, I think was a bit of a surprise. And I think a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a Bond song, of course it's going to win for Best Original Song, which is actually kind of not indicative of the history of Bond songs. As a matter of fact, 2012 Skyfall was the first Bond song to win in this category, which, for having such a long lineage, it's kind of surprising to think. And then in 2015, let's not forget that a lot of people thought the Lady Gaga song from The Hunting Ground would win for Best Original Song, and then it didn't, and actually it was surprised, and it went to the Bond song. So there's, on one hand, you would say, well, even though the 2015 Spectre song wasn't sort of amazing, people still went with it because it was a Bond song. You go, yeah, okay, therefore No Time to Die will win this year. However, you could also go, well, look at the history of Bond songs. It's only won twice. The last win was a bit of a surprise in itself. Who's to say No Time to Die will win? Particularly when you look at some of the contenders. A movie like King Richard with Beyonce's song Be Alive. Beyonce is a very well-liked member who has done performances of songs in years when she hasn't even been nominated. She has been sort of seeking an Oscar for many years, and this may be her chance to get it in a movie that's very well liked, in King Richard. Then I also look at a movie like Encanto. Lin-Manuel Miranda has had a terrific year. He directed Tick, Tick, Boom, which was a very well-liked movie that I think he almost got nominated for Best Picture, and he got nominated for First-Time Director at DGA. And also, guess what? He happened to write the songs for Encanto, so he's been doing a lot of campaigning for both those movies, and I don't think it'd be a coincidence if he sort of surprisingly wins there. Now, it's important to note that also Encanto, the song We Don't Talk About Bruno, has been destroying the charts, #1 everywhere, and sort of the biggest Disney song in many years. Now, do a lot of people know that that song is not nominated for Best Picture? That's actually Dos Oruguitas that's nominated. I don't think so. I think a lot of people may just look at it, maybe I'm being cynical, but I think a lot of people go, oh, the Encanto song, the one that I listen to all the time, that I hear on the radio, that's #1. Oh yeah, let me just vote for that. Or and another added factor that, hey, you just may go to, say, Lin-Manuel Miranda because he's never won an Oscar before, because he wrote for all the songs for Encanto. So this may be a We Don't Talk About Bruno kind of a secret wink and a nod of the win. Let's not forget that Encanto sort of did a bit of a surprise in terms of getting nominated for Best Original Score. So the movie is well liked. I do expect the movie also to get nominated to win for Best Animated Film. So there's a lot of support for Encanto. I don't think No Time to Die is sort of a slam dunk as everyone thinks, just because it's a Bond song, because if you actually look at the history of Bond songs, it's almost uncommon for them to win. And that being said, it's still a close race, so it's up to you. And all these categories are close races, so they're up to you at the end of the day. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on the different categories, on who you think is going to win in those sort of close tie races. Stay tuned to next week, where I'm going to be giving my sort of PGA, and I think SAG will be announced by then. So those reactions and thoughts and how they'll tell us about the race of the Best Picture race will be over by then. Hard to tell, but always always fun as always. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video, and until next time, stay tuned.